Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We are live now. We are on the Marché du Fil platform and also on YouTube. Thanks for being connected and thanks for attending this event. My name is Sarah Brunet. I'm working for the European Commission and especially for the Creative Europe Media Program. I'm here to introduce this showcase on behalf of Lucia Recalde, who's the head of the media program at the DG Connect. This showcase is the last one of a series of 4 showcases started at the beginning of this week in partnership with the Marché du Film. And the global concept of these showcases is to hear and dialogue with the professionals of the audiovisual industry to share their experience day to day, their difficulties, their good practices, and their advice, especially in this COVID context. Today, the topic of this showcase is access to finance for women entrepreneurs. Why this topic? In French, we say l'argent, c'est le nerf de la guerre. And we thought it was important to focus on this issue because if we want the global situation to improve for gender parity, of course, money is an important issue. And women have to access to the banks and also to investment funds as men do. And also, of course, we are talking about the access, but also the amount. And so today we have 2 very high-level speakers to talk about this, Julie Gaillet and Julian Schulz. Thanks a million for accepting our invitation and to be part of this discussion. We very much look forward for what you have to say on this topic. Also, I want to introduce Tamara Tatiashvili, who is working for the European Women Audiovisual Network. She's the strategic manager, and she will be moderating this discussion. Thanks very much to accept this partnership with media. And before I give the floor to Tamara, I want to say that, of course, with media, we are very much committed to improve the gender balance and, globally speaking, parity and diversity. And this very unprecedented crisis don't have to put back this issue. And since 1 year and a half, we've been implementing a special agenda closely with stakeholders. And we've been doing several activities because we think an holistic view is needed on this special topic. So for instance, last year we have published a good practices guide. And also we have launched a dedicated event in Cannes called Women in the Move. So this showcase is a sort of continuity of this global strategy. And of course, I also want to say that for the first time in history, we have a woman as a president, Ursula von der Leyen, and of course, parity and diversity are very close to her heart. So I have talked enough, and thanks again for participating to this showcase. Tamara, the floor is yours, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for a thorough introduction. So my name is Tamara. I represent European Women Audiovisual Network. And before I go into the very complex subject that we are trying to tackle today, let me wholeheartedly congratulate everyone who's made this online edition of Marché possible. I think we've been part of a very special experience. I think industry jointly really made it happen, and everyone, you, Sarah, your unit, all people, horizontal and vertical, present on this market, we should really have a drink tonight, because we made sense out of it, and a lot of people worked for it behind the scene. Without further ado, I'm very happy that we are co-hosting this talk together with you, because EWA Network is obviously active, is a member organization, and our agenda is to act on the further promotion of equality. We are a member organization that brings together knowledge for our members. We're trying to put mentorship programs for them. We try to boost their professional capacities and try to advocate that equality agenda is not a topic for women only. It's a topic for everyone. It echoes the issues of democracy. And if we all are equal, then we will be also inclusive. We will let all others be part of it. So we will be diverse. And I hope that this message will spread more and more. Sarah has already outlined eloquently the angle of the Commission and on the units that she represents. And I'm now privileged to first give a special welcome to the two guests. So for me, on the right side of the screen is Julie Gaillet, producer, actress, director from France, someone who's been multitasking in the creative industries, let's say, and you are here to share your practitioner experience, your real life experiences, which would be very happy and interesting for our viewers. It's interesting to know that you are CEO of 3 different companies, if I'm not wrong. So it's Rouge International, it's Cinema 4, it's Amaranth International. No? Well, you'll tell us more about your, yes.
Bonjour, bonjour.
But on the other hand, you've been also on the juries of important festivals. So you have an angle there as well and an experience. And what's the most interesting probably is your activism, Julie, in the field of the gender equality. We know that you are an outspoken professional on this topic, and you've been also part of professional organizations. And I think you are also actively promoting female women health issues. So later on, it will be very know more about the kind of films you are doing, where did you meet blockages, and why, in your own opinion. And on the right hand, I have Juliane Schulze, who is coming from Germany and who certainly is a seasoned professional who's working in the creative industries with cross-industrial knowledge, I would say, specializing in finance, responsible innovation, and the business consulting of tech-driven startups. You are the senior partner at the strategic finance consultancy Peaceful Fish, but you are also on the board of a European investor network, which I find very interesting, that brings together business angels and early stage venture capital funds focusing on creative industries and digital media. And I think we will benefit a lot from you, Juliane, to place a little bit the parts of the puzzle, where do they belong, and to collectively find a way forward. And before we go into this discussion, I welcome all the viewers that are now connected on different channels. As many of you already know, there is a Q&A button here on the screen. Please feel free writing up your questions. We will try to have 40 to 45 minutes conversation between the two professionals that are meant to be in the limelight today. And then I will be, of course, checking what's happening on the chat and try my best to voice the questions to both of them, depending on the interests of the listeners and the viewers. So, when I again read the title of this showcase, I thought, wow, we have something like less than an hour and we want to see what are the issues that female entrepreneurs are facing, why, and also we want to navigate in an industry where we know that film finance really requires a lot of upfront investment and is accompanied with a lot of risk, because it's not given that the commercial viability is attached to any project that is done in this field, especially if we look into the traditional way of producing cinema, put it that way. It's obviously known for the professional viewers here that due to that and for many other political and cultural reasons, there are a lot of financing schemes existent in Europe that are nurturing cultural diversity and are nurturing the financing of European cinema, international cinema, to make it travel, to make it happen, and to reach out with the good values that this cinema needs to promote. There is also an evidence, and we have no time to tickle each and every report or the blueprint and the parliament paper with the research, but what we also see, and I'm looking at you, Juliane, is that companies founded by or co-founded by women have somewhat better returns in a due time. Female leads are socially very responsible. They are also becoming very confident as an investors. On the other hand, we see some of the industry reports and we see the distribution of the funds, that 99% of European venture capital financing, for instance, goes to male-led firms, and that the refusal rate towards the women-led companies is higher, somewhere like 5-6% higher than of those pitched by their male counterparts. And there are a lot of examples of this kind, which we cannot really list in 45 minutes. But what we could try to understand with the expertise of the two of you is, where does the problem start? Because the creative entrepreneurship of women is probably something that we need to first visit and then put it in a bigger picture of seeing why access to finance is becoming a complexity, and then come to the real times, which is now called post-COVID. So Juliane, I would like to start with you. Maybe you help us understand if there is an evidence out there that we have a good pool of female entrepreneurs already, and it's only the moment to access of finance when the problems are created. And then I'll turn to Julie and ask her good experiences, good or more challenging experiences on the road of financing.
Thank you very much, Tamara, for your welcoming and introduction. And to go straight to your question, I think the very term entrepreneurship, female entrepreneurship, already puts one of the main problems into our faces. It's not self-evident that businesses are created by female founders, that women lead corporations, manage businesses. It's still, in regards to numbers, clear that, let's say, male management is more the dominant picture we are seeing. So it's still something we need to support, I believe, in the group of women. Female leadership needs to be supported. Everything that has to do with wrapping your vision into a business model, so to speak. So I see that in the work we do, that really goes across several sectors like film, television, games, fashion, and of course music. You know, there's a dominance of men in business functions, And this is not the only problem. I think the second aspect of the problem is that we are, of course, in the midst of a digital transition of the audiovisual sector. So more and more companies, startups are created to offer interesting and badly needed digital solutions for this transition process. And again, we have not enough women who embark on, creating a digital company, going into building digital businesses. So in the end, what we see is that this great opportunity that this transition process offers is mostly taken up by men who, of course, build solutions for a need that they have been seeing in the market. So we are missing out on an opportunity. I mean, not 100%, obviously. There are many female founders in this area who really try and are really very good at what they're doing. But in regards to statistics, it's quite obvious. And I think it's important that particularly the approach that women take who are often concerned with responsible practices, are creating businesses that have a social impact, for example, and really look at fairness and equality measures in their activities to implement, for example, blockchain, XR, AR technologies to come up with solutions that include and enable transparency, and in that sense also help the investors and financiers to be confident in participating in investment processes, because everything, be it in content management, in rights management, or financial transactions, would then be so much more easy to access by everybody. So there are several aspects to this.
Thank you very much. And let me turn. I think what you've said also echoes the fact that there is a gap there's a pay gap when you look at the men and women. There are issues with the family obligations and work-life balance, which also we know that holds some women back. And all this makes the complexity of this agenda. This is why probably we always need to put the bigger picture to understand how much of a layers need to be treated through programs and the support to make the final result tangible. But of course, we have Julie here, who's been on this road, and we know that working as a producer or a creative, it probably almost always looks quite wonderful on screen, but there are a lot that's happening backstage that are challenging. Difficulties are on this path, and especially when you try to put project together and find financing for it. So could you maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, the move towards the producing, the eagerness that you wanted to achieve, and then share a little bit on this challenges part?
Yes, and thank you very much for letting me participating. I feel very again not legitimate, which is one of the biggest problem with women, feeling legitimate on doing on talking on becoming, opening a company. I started as an actress, so it's probably different because I even less feel legitimate because I didn't do school as a producer. I was an actress, and I started very young, when I was 20 years old, with Agnes Varda, was one of the first director I worked with, and she was very sensible to that subject. But as she said, like very recently, because I became a co-producer on Faces Places, so nearly 30 years after we worked together, that she effectivement, the money is le nerf de la guerre, is the thing, because she was saying everyone are giving me honors, awards. I don't want awards, I want money. That is the thing. Give me money. Stop saying. And how it is the question, and in the entrepreneuriat, which even you said that you were talking about the digital, but for a new startup, it's the same. There is a group of women in France that are working, which I really like. They say that we need to count women for them to count, that it's really important to know that only 2% of money are going on investment on companies. So I really was very happy when 50-50
collective 50-50, yeah.
The collective 50-50 arrived in France. So we have numbers to understand, because I felt that it's our own bones as well, the fact that we really stop ourselves. That is a big subject with women. It took me 10 years to say, okay, I'm going to be a producer. Okay, because probably I was an actress, and there were very little actresses, no actresses producing films that she wasn't playing as a producer, becoming a producer. So it took me times to do that. And I had role models as Agnès Varda. So I really wanted to understand why it took me so much time to do that first step. And when I see the numbers, I am very surprised that when you have, for the script women, 96% of the script women, they paid a little bit more than men, 9%, which is very rare. There are maybe only two types of women on a set that are actually paid more than men. But the makeup and hair, they're 90% of our women, makeup and hair, and they're paid 15% less than men. Why? And so I, as a producer, said we need to make statistics, to try to get conscious of why we have that chance. So I asked all the director of production I'm working with on my films to speak to them. Just I wanted to understand, and then I realized that they never ask for more money. They never even arguments. So I was very surprised of that. So I think we women have a problem with actually sorry, it's more going for it, I would say.
For the confidence, I think you wanted to, yeah.
No, need to prove more, need to be more reassured we have all the elements before we go and get and
that's, I think, the message
anything
understood, because you're tackling something very important that is also part of the agenda where under which we are trying to construct this picture. Juliane,
the representation. Sorry,
I think we have a bit of an issue with the sound, but what about the Juliane, I'm asking you, the skills? And what about the confidence and boosting and the visibility of female entrepreneurs, not only the ones that are working in a specific territory and enjoying the existing financing structures that are possibly mostly driven by subsidies, but in general, you know, the ones that want to be more experimental, they want to embrace digital as well. How do we, where are the weaknesses, and how could professional associations and programs existing on the European level support and help, from your experience?
Yeah, I think it's totally playing into what Julie just said. There's a sense of humbleness, a sense of stepping back, being rather over-prepared before doing the first step. There's a certain shyness in taking risks. There's certainly not enough confidence in many female founders and also film producers to just do things before having thought through each and every aspect of the risks. And I think this more test and trial approach that also boys have, you know, they are much more risk-taking in simple play games or something, also already shows that there's something like a difference between the male and the female approach. So I think we need to empower women much more. We need to give them much more access to role models like Agnès Varda, like you know, great female We have to enable them to understand what the DNA of an entrepreneur really is, and to connect this understanding with the fact that they are all entrepreneurs, often not knowing that they are already deep into building something very profound. And I keep seeing more and more young founders and also people in the audiovisual sector who are very concerned and very active to work towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Yes.
And, you know, after some time of a conversation, it sort of comes out, and when I then tell them, look, isn't this exactly what the UN SDGs are about? They're like, oh, really? You know, so there's so much they do, and often so little they are conscious about. And I think that is a big hindrance, that's a big problem. In other words, we need to help female producers, founders, entrepreneurs to look at what they do much more from the perspective of the assets that they are creating on a daily basis, and to be much more able to articulate what they do and why they do it, particularly why they do it, and to wrap it in a way that a third party can understand it and see it, you know, as this kind of profound opportunity, and to drill deeper into what the business might be about. So I think we need to be almost empowered on all levels, and need to understand that most of the things that female founders, entrepreneurs are doing and not reflect on are already on a very interesting and novel path. And this needs to be highlighted, this needs to be kind of communicated and promoted in a different way. So a lot of mentoring needs to go into entrepreneurship training, leadership training, communication skills. And if you would go through all of this, you would come out much more like that, and probably perform different.
Yes, and this leads me to, well, you are also on the board of our network, Juliana, and you know that we are trying to do as much as possible, a lot on the mentorship side. And it was very interesting for me to hear Julie, you know, even though she's been exposed to the industry in her acting capacities, and she's been part of it in different ways, she still had those issues, and she's openly speaking about it. Now imagine the territories that are much lower on the production capacities. And I always take myself as someone who belongs to the industry. I've been doing different kind of jobs and been there on the production side myself. If you look into smaller territories that are not even yet as sophisticated in financial structures like France or any other European country could be, there are women who are making wonders. They are producing, they are co-producing, and as you said, like in countries like, I don't know, Bosnia, Georgia, Ukraine, you name them, you know, with political turmoil, with artistic expression sometimes being totally under risk, and they are making it happen, you know, like, for instance, Julie's been indicating. So I think we should really go on empowering and make these empowerment programs really very concrete. And what I hear from you, Juliana, it is access to decision-making positions, because I think next thing we could tackle is if there are enough female on those investment boards who can be sensitive to the applications coming out of female entrepreneurs, be it on a digital or traditional field. And also we need to be sure that women who do a lot but do not reflect how much they are acting on this agenda are brought to it and are more vocal about it, like Julie's membership to Collective 50/50 and many other national associations that exist on under this agenda. But I'm wondering, Julie, if you've been financing projects from alternative funders, let's say. Have you ever reached out to banks or other guarantee facilities and tried to get funding from a project from the ones that you've been on board of? Because I'm asking this because I would like to see if you have any experience, a challenge, or maybe a very positive exercise that played on your road. And if not, then we'll ask Juliane to explain us what's the problem there. Because very often in our industry, people call it, oh, it's a different world, the alternative financing. So let's see a little bit what's happening in this different world.
It's funny because I really realized when there was in 2007 the financial crisis, that in America that they were doing 600 and more films, that they did half of those films, and in France we nearly didn't change the numbers of film. We still produced 260 films, so it nearly didn't change. So the crisis didn't impact the French finances. So I realized that all the smaller budget, the independent film in America were financed by H funds, by alternative finances. And then I realized that in France, we do not use this type of different way of looking for equity, which I could say. And I remember going to see a French banker saying to me, oh, you're talking about like if some industrial wants to have fun and find that's love money. Because I was a woman, he said to me, oh, that's love money. As no, equity today is it's a good question, and we should really maybe think of it. So I was very surprised then how, because I wanted to look somewhere else, maybe in private equity, the banker didn't took me seriously then. And then we finally made, for example, if I still speak about Agnès Varda last film, we did found money that was equity, that was not love money, that was serious, and the people get their money back. And it was really with like any finances, any Sofica, any other way of financing. And so again, it's a way of being sure of yourself, or confident, let's say, self-confident, and inventing or trying something new. But I would say more that with this H fund, I realized as well that for women, there is something about a level of money you're asking. So in documentaries, it's okay, first film. And then when you get to big budget, that is the big question. And I realized that as a producer. So here in France, there was a big scandal because the biggest budget last year was Roman Polanski film. And why, after Me Too, why after all this happened, some producer decided to put 22 million on a Roman Polanski film, while on the other side, women have very much difficulties to get bigger budget. We just are always stuck on something that is difficult to go upper.
Juliane, I heard you talking, because you are also one of the coaches and mentors on the training School of Film Advancement, which is actually also supported partially by Creative Europe Media. And there I often hear you talking about this alternative world of financing, and you're trying to push participants, I would say, towards thinking out of box, which is not always easy, right? It really needs a little bit of a different mindset, and maybe sometimes stepping back from your dreams and becoming a bit more pragmatic on issues. So could you explain that in the film world and talk your experience with the banks as well?
Yeah, let me maybe start with the banks and try to quickly share with you what we learned in the process of dealing with banks, and also in the run-up to building the Cultural and Creative Sector Guarantee Facility. So what we have been hearing and seeing a lot is that during and after the crisis, the financial crisis, banks closed their department, their media and entertainment departments. So banks are now left with staff which does not understand the value creation and the exploitation processes in the film and audiovisual / entertainment industry. So because they don't understand it, they must regard it as high risk. And if they are not blessed with a background in structured finance and do not have, let's say, industry connections that can highlight and explain what is what and how you can lend against contracts and all these kind of cash flowing products and so on, you are really advised to keep your fingers off. So this is what they do. They don't understand it, they don't get involved. Those who have an understanding, and you could call them expert lenders in Europe, and it's just a handful left, they often look at the administrative costs in providing loans, and these costs are high and often too high given the needed funds. So then again, it's not an attractive business for banks, and they rather not offer the loans. So in that sense, it was very advisable when in 2016 the sector guarantee facility was put into place. It's run by the European Investment Fund on behalf of the European Commission, and it tries basically to help house banks of a film producer, for example, or other cultural and creative actors, to extend loans and to cover a significant part of the risk. But it's not 100% of the risk they are covering. And so again, many banks say, well, you know, that bit of remaining risk is not for us to handle, that we cannot cover. So these are some aspects that we have been observing a lot. So of course, this puts more pressure on finding alternative financing sources, and as you rightfully say, keep pushing and pulling and try to bring participants of training programs to this notion that there are other ways of financing. And in order to do that, I think it's important to understand one important thing. First of all, film is a value proposition. And right there, many people go like, pardon, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
If you look at a film as a value proposition, you turn either to your public funds and piece together 15 different territories in your financing mix and try to make your funding body happy and hope for an audience to see your film. But if you go for the alternative model, and that brings the other aspect of value as in convictions and beliefs. In that sense, a value proposition offers you completely different routes and different space. And this space, you would enter first by asking, why do I do this film? What does it stand for? How do I add value to my audience? And why would my audience care for my film and not go to see a blockbuster? So you begin to think much more market-oriented and audience-oriented. And with that in place, you also build relationships much earlier. You begin to describe your project in a different way, and you are able to bring partners on board who would otherwise not even notice you. And I think this is, on a very high level, without going into much detail, the difference in mindset. And in that sense, you would then be able to talk to high net worth individuals, to brands. You would be able to access equity that is not love money, but why not also love money? It's never bad. But this kind of different perspective, I think, is important to be able to access alternative finance.
Sorry, we are already, we have some 15-20 minutes maximum, actually. That's been a challenge and an ambition to cover such a complex topic, but I hope we are giving some clear indications in the direction, and I'm sure that the organizers would be happy to follow on a more concrete actions on that. I want to leave some time and recap. There's a lot on the chat window as well, so I'll try to do it in a minute. But before we go there, I would like to have your quick replies, if possible, on the situation post-pandemic. I have a view that a lot of things that we probably called normal do need to validly be questioned now. And if it is because of the pandemic, and if it has escalated, and if we can go to a healthier, more inclusive environment and making it less elitistic and really boost diverse presence in the industry, diverse content on screen, off screen, that can be only good. So I'm wondering to the opinion of the two of you on a post-COVID situation and whether the financing could be more complicated to be obtained or not. And then I'll try to highlight some of the questions that we have on the chat. So, Julie, maybe you start, and then, yeah.
I am actually producing a film of a woman director called Dinara Drukarova, and the film is the adaptation of a book called A Woman at Sea. We have to shoot on the sea, and it's nearly an action film. It needs a lot of technicity. And actually, she's always asked if she's capable of doing this film. Oh, how strange. But anyway, it's a film on the sea, and we're doing a co-production with France, Quebec, and Canada and Belgium. But at the moment, we can't go because we're shooting the film in the north of Kegaska, so it's very difficult. So we've been trying to reinvent, and actually the COVID is going to stop the shooting because we will have to wait for next season. It is not going to work. Well, we've been thinking of maybe changing the way of financing and doing more shooting in Belgium than what we thought, because we were supposed to do everything in Canada. So we actually are changing that. And so we're as a producer, it's like jumping and inventing and finding new ways. And we are asked for the CNC Belge, and so we're going to do it again. But we have more time now, and if we have more time, we can invent other things. And we're changing even the shooting times, so we maybe will get more money from Belgium. So anyway, we're reinventing. But it is because we didn't want it to spend also too much money on we have that for another film on the COVID, which is extra expenses that are not going to be on the screen. And we have a lower budget than a big blockbuster. It's always difficult with because for that film, it's an action film. I'm always saying everything is going to be in the production of the film. We really need to put the money on the image, not into a nurse or the problem we're going to get with the insurance and everything else. So maybe probably there is positive things but I definitely won't shoot now if it's more expenses that are not going to be on the screen.
Okay, and you've mentioned something very important on this agenda, that is access for female professionals to the high budget films. As we know,
that's something I want.
This is a topic.
And to genre film as well, because I also produce genre women directors shooting genre film, and when you're a young women director, you have to it's difficult when you have a genre film.
Absolutely. And for instance, Sweden, just as one of the important examples, and the country that drew a lot on the agenda, does have also the scheme that tackles this high budget film access and even supports professionals writing scripts of that kind. But of course, a lot has to be still done on that. So thank you very much for this very concrete input. And Juliane, what's your future thinking post-COVID? Where are we going? Is it a bumpy ride, even worse than it used to be?
I think it's a great opportunity, and let me tell you why. Because I think that after 3 months, only 3 months of an almost complete lockdown, every skeptic now is acknowledging that our economic model that is based on eternal growth is failing, and that we need to, or are already in the process of shifting towards a dynamic and balanced model, which works with and not against the limited resources we have. So I think this is a great moment to finally underline that our economic model is not fit to cope with the consequences this pandemic has been highlighting. So what I believe is that because of this transition process that is affecting each and every area of our lives, social structures, private lives, cultural and creative lives, there is a very strong need for new narratives. And I believe that there is no better suited audience than the storytellers that film producers work with and are themselves to provide us with these new narratives. So for me, it is a great opportunity. It's a transition process. We do not know where we end up, but we know we are in the process of creating something new. And I would like to see the let's say also digitally based enhancements, which we have been seeing, larger audiences, more diverse audiences with screen festivals. And I think if we keep going in this direction and create a kind of physical and digital balance, we might end up with very interesting solutions and new offers also for audiences and creatives.
And tell me if I'm wrong quickly, but I believe that all this advancement and transition cannot really only happen by its own, though it's been triggered, but probably it's the very moment now when we can question the normal, so to say, and really try to devise programs that are helping this process of adaptation, because that will be the only informed way of moving forward in a more sustainable way as well. And I think that our industry has somewhat fully realized now how much important it is to create the sustainable environment. This said, there's probably no way to reply to all that's coming in the chat. There are good comments towards two of you, some good examples happening in the US, in other countries. So let me maybe first summarize three questions that are more or less on the same line towards Julie. There are people, Julie, who are also having same path, like moving from acting into producing on the chat, and who could really echo what you're saying. And they are asking you whether you have concrete tips to give, and if there are any specific trainings that they could attend, or how are you dealing with the issues of insurances right now post-COVID? That's a lot, but if you can like touch base on those.
Insurance, we are looking, because with the co-production is going to be also the Canadian or Belgium or French, and we are actually watching. And in France, some insurance are now into participate to the fund of the CNC, which is great news. But they are actually for the moment, they're not, it's not easy. So we're studying it, but they're making efforts and they really want to be there. So we have the chance to have different insurance we can talk to. So we are actually studying the situation. So I don't have a name, but what we were saying about in the numérique and the solution of now going with the Julian with the financing, with also the internet, the FAI, the big with, that's what you were saying, Julian, about now.
But again,
COVID, we can finance by selling to also internet.
No, I meant, I mean, yes, of course you can try that. No, I think that digital solutions give you access to audiences in a way that we need to explore much more.
Okay.
So in that sense, it's
the digital financing, or you meant oh, I thought you meant the
both. You know, it has both sides. If you mobilize your audience early on, and you turn your audience into, let's say, fans who like to support you financially, it's a win-win situation, and you really, work closely. I think this is a great opportunity for value-based films.
Yeah.
Julie, let me just throw another question on you, as if you don't have enough, but there's a question coming up. If after Me Too movement, you found it easier to finance films done by female professionals, scripted or directed?
I didn't hear you. You freezed. Hello?
Did you find it easier after Me Too movement to finance projects by female directors or women issues in the subject?
I still find difficult when you're out of the box, but all our projects are out of the box, but definitely when we have like unfortunately there is a representation or a woman should more do a comedy, a love comedy, or it's more how we gonna for example, for Women at Sea, it's really, we need a bigger budget than what she should on, because it's her author film. So we know that we're gonna arrive to the a roof of finance, and it's going to be difficult to be au-dessus, on top of that money. But we need more money because it's going to be an action film with a lot of technical, with a boat, with a water tank, very technical things to finance. So how you do that when basically you've been in a box of author films? This is 2 million, 3 million, and more than 3 million is difficult. So it's how you get the change. But I am always positive, thinking that digital is going to bring new solution. But we're in the movement, and for the moment, it's not so easy.
Yeah, it's a transition, and it's a transition that brings a lot of knowledge requirement as well. I would like to address the viewers for all the questions that relate to our network. Please just go on internet on evanetwork.com, as you can see in my bar, and just email them all to us, and we can answer there, so we don't have to take time now. And now I will read out, Juliane, one question to you from one of the first people writing on the chat. That is by a female founder of a tech startup for the creative industry. The challenge has also been to find funding for advertising budget, to let the women creatives know there is a platform created to support them. How do you propose we solve the Catch-2020 issue in this? And I think this relates to many other startups as well, the connotation behind the question.
Yes, exactly. I mean, if there is no money available that you can use and spend on increasing your outreach and kind of furthering your way to connect with your clients and audiences, it could always be interesting to look at cross-communication possibilities, to team up with, like-minded, well-positioned companies that try to achieve something similar or complementary, and to see if by combining resources and strategies, if you can, without spending more money, reach your goal of, spreading the word and developing more visibility for your platform. I'm a great believer of collaboration and the let's say articulated benefits in partnering with maybe also bigger companies, but that again needs a kind of value proposition oriented type of analysis. And if you then would, let's say, open a dialogue with such company, they would quickly understand if your offer is for them and if it brings added value. If it will, then I think you have a good opportunity to embark on that journey.
I am afraid we will need to wrap now. I think one very concrete takeaway, the first one, is that this is a subject that needs time, that I'm sure that on our end and probably on the end of Creative Europe Media as well, it's quite clear already that we could go on talking. And Sarah, I'm looking at you now. There's a lot that we can have a deeper dive and really go into nitty-gritty of the problems. But slowly we need to wrap. I would like to echo what Julie said, what Juliane suggested very strongly, and finish on a positive note. Let's really try to use this as post-pandemic as an opportunity. And if we've been doing some wrong things, and if we've been not enough open and too self-centric on different parts of the industry, let's also use it as a moment when we question those normals. Luckily, there's a lot on the side of media and also on the within the private sector research, which shows that female leadership is associated with productivity, profitability, growth, responsible innovation, all these words that we like to hear, but there's still a lot to be achieved. And I hope that people like yourself, but a lot of great women out there. We had comments on the chat from Jamaica, from US, men, women, agreeing with you, giving you supporting messages. And it would be wonderful, of course, to reply to all of it, but it also shows that there is a demand and there is an interest to keep this conversation going. So unless, Sarah, you want to say something,
Yes, please. I just want to say 2 words very,
Sure.
very quickly. Of course, I want to thank you all again. You've been, it's been so interesting and I think very important for all the audience and for us policymakers to hear these testimonies. And of course, also I want to add that it is especially important in this context because as you know, the Commission and Commissioner Thierry Breton has proposed a major and ambitious recovery plan and a new multi-annual budget for the European Commission. And it will mean that money will be available, but not only as subsidies, but as loans and equity. And I think women entrepreneurs has especially the opportunity to learn, I think, with, let's say, the capacity building and to be stronger with getting and accessing this money. So in this context, I think this topic was particularly important.
I wanted to navigate a little bit that direction. So thank you very much for making it a very clear, once again, in the end, the angle that you are trying to nurture, which is very pragmatic and should be really welcomed. For us as partners on this talk, it's important to empower, to provide training, to see more women making a change. So whatever associations like ours could contribute, I'm very, very sure that a lot of people are out there who could be part of this constructive dialogue. And all of that would, two of you, Juliane and Julie, you've been today in the spotlight. I was just here to drive a little bit the conversation. So thank you very much for your time. It's also the last day of the Marché. So this is the last showcase, Sarah, right?
Yes, right.
Of course. So let's really finish. Thank our viewers. This talk will be available online later on. So there have been some issues about it, but be assured that you can watch it. And let's hope that we will meet in person soon in more sensitive understanding of the changes that we need to drive in the future together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ciao, Sarah. Ciao, Julie. Ciao, Tamara.
We need networking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.